Well, good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. Welcome to all of our guests tuning in from around the world. Today's production of Invisible Women in Sport is an Institute for Sport and Social Justice production. I'm your producer, Garnett Overby III. All guests will be muted during this production, but I encourage you to use the chat feature to ask questions or leave a comment. We will reserve time at the end to answer your questions. So now, without further ado, I would like to welcome our host, Taylor Middleton.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to Season 2, Episode 9 of Invisible Women in Sport. I am your host, Taylor Middleton, and today I am joined with Binh Nguyen, Director of Academic and Membership Affairs at the NCAA. So how are you doing today, Binh?
I'm doing good. Thanks for having me. I'm excited to be here and to have a conversation with you all.
Of course. So like I mentioned before, we're going to be doing rapid fire today, which is a quick little hot seat, 30 seconds, get people involved in the chat as well. So if anyone is in the chat and wants to participate, feel free to blow it up with your answers. So we have 30 seconds, and I'm going to get started in 3, 2, 1. Tennis or golf?
Tennis.
Your favorite snack?
Oh my gosh. Plantains.
Ice cream or candy?
Candy.
Earliest you've ever showed up to work?
5:30.
And then what's, goal of the year?
To survive.
Nice. 2 seconds to spare. That survival, and I feel like is something everybody's feeling with the pandemic going on.
I think so too.
Well, just to get started, can you tell us a little bit how you got interested in sport and if you participated in any growing up?
Sure. And again, Taylor and to Garnett, thanks so much for having me. Just fortunate to be here and to follow so many others that you've had on this programming to provide to people in the membership. Where I got started in sports is I come from a family of 9 siblings, six brothers. Now I'm lying. 6 sisters and 3 brothers, and good old Asian Catholic family. I was the tag along where my brothers brought me along when they needed that extra body. Whether it's they needed another wiffle ball person to play, football, basketball, or I usually get stuck with being the catcher as well. But I was the tag along for my brothers, and it always seemed that that's probably where it started in life, where I was fortunate to have folks that looked out for me and brought me along the way. So I'm really close to my siblings, and to this day still look up to them for opening up doors for me to participate in sports.
Wow. So did you end up doing any in high school, or did you just like tag along for most of the time?
In high school, I did dabble in volleyball for a little bit before I recognized that I was not going to be taller than 5'3". I decided to switch to golf, where I could use some of my strengths on the golf course. My first love was basketball, and then I played tennis in the spring, and then softball in the summer. We also played, similar to probably many of you, where you had the neighborhood kids playing, and we would also have all those crazy games you would play or made up games. We actually had a game where we would hit the tennis ball around the house, and if you caught it, you got a point. We were just, we didn't know any better, and it just kept us out of the trouble.
So yeah, you guys didn't break anything throwing a tennis ball in the house, did you?
I can't promise that there wasn't a window that needed to be replaced.
So then after going through, just all of that, participating in different sports and just different activities with people around, did you have any aspirations to play in college, or did it kind of just stop there?
I actually was recruited to play tennis at the University of Evansville.
Mm,
Um, Me and my doubles partner were recruited as a tandem to go there. I opted out. My parents, ever since I was young, had instilled in me the importance of education. Um, we are, my siblings and myself, are first generation college students. Very fortunate that we came to the United States and to have an education. Most of us have degrees past our bachelor's as well. So that was heavily ingrained into me growing up, the importance of education. I opted out of playing at Evansville, focused on my studies, and to just, as I mentioned, um, just focusing on making sure I got a degree and excelled in the academic space.
mm. I can definitely relate. My mom, it was like there was no question that I was going to undergrad or grad school. And
Mhm.
like now she's pushing for a PhD, and I'm like, slow your roll, please. Like, let me just finish my master's.
Dr. Middleton has a great ring to it.
Maybe some years from now, but I'm ready to like go and work. So even with that, talking about undergrad, you were a history major at Evansville. So how did you go from there to getting a master's in sports business at Tennessee?
Well, technically, I was a US history major with focus on the Civil War.
Mm.
Any other history to me does not interest me. Or once you got past the Civil War, I sort of fell asleep. Um, I actually wanted to become a teacher and a coach. When I realized when I was at Evansville that I probably do not have the demeanor or the patience to work with high school kids,
Mm,
I slowly shifted to history, and then was aspiring to become an attorney.
mm,
And how I got to University of Tennessee was, um, you'll hear hopefully today a lot about how our industry or profession is built on relationships. And when I was at Evansville, I was an intramural supervisor, heavily involved in intramurals. The director there, Jerry Runyon, my senior year, left to go to the University of Tennessee in Knoxville to become the director of sports clubs. He asked before he left, if you're ever interested in coming, love to have you. If there's an opportunity, feel free to reach out. And once I reached my senior year, trying to figure out what to do, go to law school, go back home, find a job, I reached out to Jerry and he said, we've got a GA position open in sports clubs here. Why don't you apply? Come to Tennessee. And now who wouldn't want to go? Pat Summitt was there. They were winning championships. So because of my relationship with Jerry, he reached out. We were able to get admitted and so forth. And that was the rest of the story of how I got to the University of Tennessee from Evansville.
mm. So then can you talk a little bit about some of the stuff that you learned in your GA position, being at Tennessee, and then going from like such a small school like Evansville to such a big one in like Knoxville?
And even my hometown was about 10,000.
Mm,
And then Evansville is close to 3,000 enrollment. It's a private Methodist institution. And then blossomed to 40,000 when I
mm,
got to the University of Tennessee. And when we chatted, I mentioned that being at Tennessee was very formative to my professional as well as personal growth, because that was probably the first time where I really was exposed to people of so many backgrounds, so many ethnicities, ways of thinking, people that looked like me.
mm,
Um, and I also realized too was that you could have a career in sports, whether it was rec sports, compliance, business, marketing. I didn't realize that there was a whole host of opportunities out there that existed in something I love, which was sports. So Jerry was I'm so grateful that he opened the door for me to go to Tennessee, and to have those opportunities to see what was out there other than going to law school.
Yeah, the other day we had talked about it, and I told you like Tennessee, great track that they have there, but the pollen is a no-go for me. I don't think I could do it. So
But
good for you.
that's our home course advantage is the pollen.
You just get used to it over the
Hmm.
years. It's a lot. So then like even there, just kind of getting that confidence to being in a bigger space, because I understand that as well. My high school was only 200 kids, and then I went to the University of Pittsburgh,
Wow.
which is like 30,000 people. So that was a big transition. So how was it going from that space to start initiating some of your goals to then get to the NCAA?
I think what I learned, and Jerry did such a great job of telling me, you need to step out, meet people, set up informational interviews so that people get to know you. When I left the University of Tennessee, I had that foundation. I actually moved back to the Midwest in Chicago. I was managing a golf course on the north side of Chicago, and I was at that juncture of finally making the move to go to either Notre Dame or BC for law school. But at that same time, the Women's Basketball Coaches Association just posted a position, a 18-month temporary position where you managed a college all-star game with a high school all-star game as a doubleheader. And then the other portion was managing basketball related legislation. So unique combination. I was fortunate enough to start in January of 2003 with my first women's Final Four there in Atlanta, doing these two things. And what I took from Tennessee to Atlanta at the WBCA was to continue that relationship building. And as I mentioned, that's going to be a theme that resonates today, is about relationship building. Is that part of my duties is women's basketball legislation compliance at the WBCA, making sure coaches knew what rules were intact, what's being proposed. And the way AMA, academic and membership affairs, works is you have a contact in AMA, where I currently work, with the coaches associations. My contact, who I would reach out to for assistance, was Lynn Holzman. Many of you know Lynn Holzman, who is now the vice president of women's basketball. And when Miles Brand said we need to focus on academic reform in 2005, she encouraged me to apply because of my work with her. She encouraged me to apply, and I applied, and this is the rest of the story. 15 years later, I'm still living the dream of working at the national office, helping student athletes, as well as working with women's basketball.
So then even when you got there, we had some people in my program who graduated the year before kind of saying that like they've seen you, they've worked with you, and that you're a pretty big legend at the NCAA in the office. So how is it like knowing that people kind of just like look up to you in that way, and just like the goals that you've had since you got there, seeing them come to life?
I think people probably know me better for my candy bucket, which I think most folks here who work at the national office or have been, I have a candy bucket that I keep pretty full. Um, I've gotten to know, there's some hand clapping. I've gotten to know people through the candy bucket, learning that they have kids, that their kids had a dance recital the night before. I've also learned that there's some people that are allergic to chocolate. I did not realize that that was a thing. Or I think Shauna Cobb holds the record for eating Reese's Pieces the fastest. But back to the legend. I've just been fortunate to come in, work hard, and opportunities present itself. I also have learned through the years, similar to what Jerry did for me at the University of Tennessee, was to pay it forward to other folks, whether it's mentoring, getting them involved in committee work or projects where they get exposure to other people in the office. Just trying to pay that forward, and just recognizing that I do have a platform, I do have access, and that sharing that will only make us better.
Mhm. So then you're also involved with a lot of committees and women's leadership groups. So how is it balancing that plus your job that you hold at the NCAA office?
I think with all of this, when you find a passion, you're willing to put forward the hours and the time to do what you're passionate about.
Mhm.
Um, I don't recommend it, but there might be some less than 6 hours of sleep each night. Um, but those two, the areas in which I work, I'm very passionate about, but I'm even more passionate about the people I work with, that I get to work with, because they're strategic, they're broad thinkers, and they also invest in me and my development. Um, so back to when I was talking about my brothers, is that the national office also has a tremendous support system that if I ever need a break or somebody to pick up something, there's 3 or 4 people that are willing to raise their hand, um, that are willing to help. And they recognize that people do need help and that we do get the work done, but we also get it done together.
Mhm.
So we just have a tremendous support system and colleagues at the national office, and it's great. I see so many former colleagues on this Zoom as well that have taken what we've learned at the national office and have spread what we're trying to do in their various places.
Yeah, I was gonna say there's a lot of people talking about Ben's candy bucket or Ben's bin, which is a very good play on words. So that's really great that those people are still there for you and still speaking to you. So even with that, also you are the first lead for the NCAA's employee resource group for women. So what were you hoping to like accomplish with that and teach like younger women that are coming into that space?
When Kim Ford, who former staffer, came to me and approached me about this opportunity, I was just so humble that they thought of me to lead this first ever women's employee resource group, and that the national office was stepping up its game to provide resources for their employees, not just in the women's space, but LGBTQA, people of color. We used to have newcomers and new employees as well. And when they came to me, I just thought it was a great opportunity for us to figure out ways in which we could uplift our staff, especially women, whether it was programming, bringing in speakers, also trying to make a presence in the Indianapolis community. So we started a pop-up speaker series where every month we brought in a speaker from the membership to share their story about how they got to where they were. We know that, Taylor, your path to becoming Dr. Middleton is going to be different from my path to wherever I'm going. And we all have secrets that we're willing to share with others on how you got to the seat you're in. And we did that for an entire year. We also provided a charity fundraiser where you could buy candy bars for $2 and then write a note of gratitude to a female at the national office who has been impactful to you. In my first year, we raised close to $500 that went to Dress for Success. So again, trying to be impactful. And to be honest, we were just trying to figure out how to get up and running in our first year. There was no handbook. There was no instructional manual to figure out how to get this up and running. But it was very fulfilling, as well as very humbling, that I got selected to do that. But also 5 to 6 years later, it's blossomed into such an impactful organization, resource group, that so many other leaders I feel have built on to the foundation, and that it still continues to be and a very effective as well as a very group that continues to give back.
So then, even with all your spaces that you are involved in, is there anything that you would still like to see change or that you would like personally like to improve?
I think one area, not so much to improve, but to continue to emphasize that as we work in athletics, and your demonstration of it is that our student athletes graduate.
Mm-hmm.
They're graduating at 90% rate. We see the news that's out there about the scandals, the recruiting improprieties that are going on.
Yeah.
But that's only the tip of the iceberg when you think about the impact college athletics has had on young men and women and giving them access to education. And they are excelling in the classroom, is to continue to emphasize that that's why we're in this business. It's a people business, and the impact that we have on young men and women is so much more important than what you're seeing in the news.
Mm-hmm. I can definitely like speak to that myself, being a previous student athlete, and also just like the resources that are given to the schools, like with our life skills department that we
Mm-hmm.
have. I will rave about them until the day that I die. I love those people. They're probably the reason why I am here right now at UCF as well. So I definitely learned a lot, even with, you being in compliance, all our
Yep.
meetings with them and Title IX, got to go through it all. So definitely appreciate everything that, you guys are doing at the NCAA office, and that we might not even see as student athletes, but I know that it goes a long way because I'm proof of that. And I hope that it keeps going. And so even looking at that as well, one thing to mention too is that you are an Asian American woman. So do you feel that there's been any stigma around Asian Americans in the sports industry, or just any things that you feel like are not there yet?
I think probably the most important or visible is that there's probably not enough. And and I use the quote is that if you can see it, you can be it. And what Amy Huchthausen, Vicky Chun, and Pat Chun are doing with the alliance they just released, is a great opportunity for us to um, include more Asian Americans as well as Pacific Islanders in intercollegiate athletics. It was not surprised that they did it. They're all leaders. They saw an opportunity, they saw a gap, and are trying to fill that gap. I think it's more the visibility of seeing folks that are either commissioner or an athletic director that, hey, a young girl or a young man can see that one day they could be that person.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, so I think probably that would be an area of focus, and what they're doing has been a great start for us.
Do you feel like you kind of faced any obstacles in those spaces being Asian, or had anyone like kind of point you out because of your race or anything along those lines?
I think the obstacle that I experienced was when people finally realized I wasn't Amy Huchthausen, because she is a professional, hardworking, and once they realized we weren't the same person, that was probably the one obstacle. Um, all kidding aside, I don't recall, but probably the obstacle I felt I had was that I was a non-traditional hire at the national office, meaning wasn't a former student athlete, didn't come from campus, and there was a need or a desire for me to continue to prove that I belonged at the national office. working hard, making sure I did the extra step, um, just taking those steps to make sure that I demonstrate to my colleagues as well as the people that hired me that I belonged at the national office. Um, Tremendous, like I've said before, the NCAA embraces the perspectives, having different folks at the table to make sure we vet all issues. And whether you are the traditional former student athlete compliance or not, you do bring a perspective to the table that's very valued and probably raises some questions or concerns that others may not. So I think that would be the one I would highlight for myself.
Well, thank you so much for that. And thank you so much for being here with us today. I have one more question left. And for anyone in the audience, if you have any questions for Ben, please post them in the chat for Garnett to do our Q&A. And again, Ben, thank you so much for being here today. So just to wrap it up, what is some advice you could give to young women going into this industry or have aspirations to be in it one day?
I think two of the things that I mentioned that highlights some of my story is working hard and the opportunities will come. And I felt that that's what happened when I was at the WBCA, working hard and then the opportunities to come here to the NCAA, the committee service, as well as the special projects that I've been given at the national office, I feel are a result of working hard, demonstrating that I can do the work. And the second portion is one I would continue to emphasize is that we are in a people business. We are in a relationship building business. Is take the time, set up coffee. Garnett, I have it on my to-do list to reach out to Sable Lee, who's here, um, to build those relationships. And to make sure you continue to nurture those relationships because like I said, we are in a people business. I'm not a hugger, but I've learned that you do need to hug in this industry. um, so being able to pivot um, such as that is also something that you do need to be able to do in order to excel in intercollegiate athletics.
Well, thank you so much for being here today and speaking with us. I'm going to pass it over to Garnett for our Q&A.
All right, Ben, thank you so much. And it looks like your candy bin is extremely popular. So I'm a chocolate person, so I'm going to have to visit your bin when it's safe to do so. But we have a few questions here for you. And the first one comes from Lisa Archibald. And Lisa is asking, Lisa is asking, how have you managed the last year with the COVID and the massive stress on the national office?
Thanks, Lisa. I think for many of us, it's about perspective. We're watching the news that COVID is spreading. It's taking people's lives. It's taking family members from families. I think for me, it's as I did in the quick fire is to survive. And what I was doing this past year was playing a lot of golf, trying to get outside, reading. I did spend close to 4 months in Michigan with my oldest sister and her family, just so I could have interactions with, or in-person interactions with other human beings. But I think it's perspective that I'm still alive, we're all still alive, and that it just teaches us that life is fragile and not to take advantage of what we've been given and to make sure you make the most of it.
Thank you for that. We have a comment from Sonia Steele, and Sonia is saying that she doesn't have a question, but she just wants to thank you for all that you have done for me and the conference. Amazing supporter, you are the best. We also have another comment from, and Ben, I'm going to ask you to assist me with the last name because I don't want to mess it up. Lindsay, and how do you say Lindsay's last name?
I can't see it in the chat.
Ekwerekwuu.
I don't know, but I know she's at Nebraska Omaha.
Okay. Lindsay, I apologize for not being able to pronounce your name, but I promise I'm going to learn how to pronounce it. And Lindsay said that I just want to thank you for all of your support over the years. You have been extremely helpful and supportive to me in my role, my current and previous institutions. Grateful for you, Ben. We do.
Garnett, just a quick story about Sonia Stills. Many of you know her. She's at the MEAC. We've been fortunate to come to the MEAC every year just to assist with any academic questions. And I always tell people you need to be prepared with a walk-up song. And my walk-up song is Here Comes the Hot Stepper. And I was presenting one day, smoke came out of nowhere, and in the background, the song came up was Here Comes the Hot Stepper.
I like that. You know what? I need some more people on my production team to find that right now so we could play it. So we might try to play that before we get off today. But Lindsay is gracious enough to say she's not offended. She can hardly say her name herself. So I appreciate that, Lindsay. We do have a question from our very own GA, Olivia Wiggins. And Olivia is asking us a two-part question. The first part is what do you look for in people who you would hire? And the second part is what can young women who want to work in sports do to set themselves apart?
I think to your first question, certainly having the traits of hardworking, competent, and good writing skills, all of that. But also we would look at fit to make sure you fit with the team, making sure that personality-wise, you just add that to the team. Would also think about thinking outside the box and figuring out what else you bring to the team other than campus experience, for example. Perhaps you worked in a law firm that focused on gender equity. That's another great asset we could have to the team, is to think about some of those intangibles that people may not be thinking about. And to your second question is, how do you set yourself apart? I think leadership looks different. Whether you could be the outgoing or you could be the reserved, introverted, such as myself. Just trying to figure out how to set yourself apart in terms of going the extra mile. When somebody asks you to put an Excel sheet together, you also do the research as to why we have the data. Taking those extra steps to demonstrate that you're willing to do the work. Also being thoughtful. I raised the question or the comment about the candy bucket, is that I've learned so much about my colleagues, and it's so impactful. I feel that when you remember their birthday, you remember their daughter had a game that night before, ask them how their daughter did in that game. That also demonstrates you're paying attention, you're observant, and that you're also have a vested interest in your colleagues. So that would be something I would highlight for young men and women in any industry as they're getting their professional career underway.
That is great advice. Thank you for that. We have another question from one of our GAs, Larissa Campalo, and Larissa is asking about the types of challenges that you've had to face in your life and how did you overcome them?
I think the the tenets or the key points I mentioned before about having a support network has gotten me through either family loss or I didn't get the job I applied for. That having a huddle, if you're reading Brooke Baldwin's book about huddling, is to having a support network that's willing to and ready to lift you up when you need it. Also, just I do put a lot of emphasis on my faith, and being able to turn to that in times when you need it or when you don't need it as well has helped me to move along to whether it's grieving, recovering from a medical condition and so forth, and also time. I've learned that time does heal wounds. We tend to want immediate action or resolution right away. Time has certainly been very helpful in trying to move on when adversity has come.
Wonderful. Thank you for that. Sonia actually commented, she's not in a place right now where she can put on her camera, but she says she is crying right now. Thank you, Sonia. I have one more question for you, and then I'm going to turn it back over to Taylor. And this question comes from Miss Shauna Cobb. Hey, Shauna. And Shauna asked the question, what is your dream job?
If I had a dream job, I think I mentioned I'm a golfer. I think it would be cool to run like the Ryder Cup, which is the competition between the United States and Europe, or the women's equivalent, the Solheim Cup. I think that would be really cool to be the event manager for that. Just traveling internationally, playing golf. I love golf. I think that would be pretty neat. And whoever has it, I'm looking out. Watch out for me.
Outstanding. Thank you, Ben, so much. Back to you, Taylor.
Well, thank you for being here today. There was another comment. I really hope I don't say this wrong, but it looks like Manoy Chopra, who says, "Hi, Ben. Thanks for all you do for the Committee on Academics. I can always rely on your great advice. Keep reaching for the stars."
Yeah, Manoj is a great, he's actually the FAR at UCF.
Oh.
We're fortunate to have him on the committee and to have him for close to 4 to 5 years now.
Oh, wow. Well, thank you for being here with us today. And we really appreciated it. Clearly, from the way the audience responded, they all loved hearing you speak today, and you have a lot of support. So we really appreciate you for being here with us.
Thanks so much for having me.
Of course. So again, sorry about this. Please tune in on June 3rd at 2 p.m. for episode 10, where I will be speaking with Shalissa Griffin, the Director of Business Development and Events at the Greater Orlando Sports Commission. And please follow us on all social media platforms at Institute SSJ to stay up to date and informed on future programs. And if you ever miss an episode, we also have you covered on YouTube. Thank you again for all the support of Invisible Women in Sport. We are a nonprofit organization with other programs that impact various social justice issues. Please use the QR code to support us with a financial gift as we continue to change lives through the power of sport. Thank you. Again, thank you to our guest, Binh Nguyen, today for being here with us, our producer, Garnett L. Overby III, our senior advising consultant, Matt Edelson, our graduate assistants, Larissa Campello and Olivia Wiggins, and our blog writer, Kennedy Collins. Again, special thank you to everyone who supports Invisible Women in Sport and the Institute for Sport and Social Justice. If you did not get a chance to listen, we are also on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, and Spotify and YouTube, as I mentioned before. You can follow us at Institute SSJ on any other social media platforms such as Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, or LinkedIn. And then again, viewers, we need your feedback to make Invisible Women in Sport the best it can be. So following today's episode, you will receive a short survey. Please complete and submit it to us. And again, we have still been getting a lot of inquiries about connections to internships. So if any of our supporters or members have internships available, please send your information to our producer, Garnett Overby at goverby@ucf.edu, so we can send it out to the people reaching out to us. All links will also be in the chat and online. And again, tune in on June 3rd at 2 p.m., where I will be speaking with Shalissa Griffin. I am your host for Invisible Women in Sports Zoomcast. See us now.